had no interest in bicycles. They just wanted to do something mechanical. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand about Project Bike Tech, and it really opened my eyes at that point. We're able to provide just general shop skills, shop awareness, tool use, introduction to things like torque and, rotational momentum.
Welcome to Spokes and Strategy, Marketing the Bicycle with Brandon Morphew and Chris Mailman of Miso Partners. Welcome to Spokes and Strategy, where the business of bikes meets the joy of riding. Bike shops have been asking and are curious, where are they going to find the next capable person for the workbench? Where do they come from? Schools keep asking how to make math and physics and career learning more real and more approachable. Project Bike Tech puts a bicycle between those two questions. And Paul Stucki joins us today to talk about what students learn when they diagnose and repair something with their own hands. The harder question of how a great program like Project Bike Tech survives when a teacher who carried it moves on. I'm Brandon Morphew, and I'm flying solo today. So I'll get right into it, Paul. What are you riding lately? What's got you finding joy on the bicycle?
Oh, we've got some local trails here that I really like. I'm in Montrose, Colorado, and one of my favorites is the Spring Valley Loop. Just a nice local trail system that you can get into. It's not super busy, but we raised our boys in Gunnison, and we're not too far away from Gunnison. So one of my favorite places to ride is Hartman Rocks in Gunnison.
Fantastic. Is there a little repair that you had a part of recently that maybe was a moment of joy or some satisfaction that you got from it?
Yeah, I actually learned how to service the clutch on my Shimano rear derailleur recently, and was having some difficulties. And my son works for Shimano or works for a company that represents Shimano, and he said, you can actually go in and fix that. And I catch a little grief from my son because I'm the bike tech guy, and he always ribs me a little bit and says, hey, Captain Bike Tech, you really should know how to do this. He's much more accomplished than I am, and I figured it out and got it done, and I was really super proud of that, and it's working fantastic.
Oh, that's fun. So, Paul, Stucki, you've spent 25 years in public education, including 5 years teaching Project Bike Tech curriculum. You've also taught high school mathematics, working with students in an alternative school setting. You've got a background in bikes, including professional mountain bike racing, coaching at Aspen High School for the mountain bike team, as well as guiding in Colorado mountains. And then on the winter side, a slight change of terrain. You've competed in the Bud Pro Mogul Tour. So today you're the Project Bike Tech Educational Support Specialist, and you're helping teachers and schools use bicycle technology to build skills, confidence, and new possibilities for young people. I'm grateful for your time. Thank you so much for making time to sit down and speak with me.
Thanks for having me. This is really a great opportunity for us as well.
Excellent. Now, you said something in the questionnaire that caught my attention. You consider yourself to have operated on the fringe of the cycling industry. What do you think that position has allowed someone like yourself to see? And then, what might someone in a career industry person, what might they have missed? That you get to see.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting question. By operating on the fringe, I guess what I meant there is I've never really worked in a shop. I've never really been a professional cycling career person, although I've operated, on the fringe for quite a while as an athlete, and with kids coming up through, and lots of colleagues involved. But the education, I think I got into education a little bit late. I was working as my original degree was in outdoor recreation, and that's where I got into competitive skiing and cycling. And when I got into education, I think that brought a unique combination. Not really a hardcore cycling industry person, but also not really a hardcore educational person. And I came into it, and that's one of the reasons I gravitated towards the alternative education piece, was because I really wanted to get in there and help the kids that were struggling in classes. And I believe that this program, in addition to a lot of other things, it really does help a lot of kids find meaning in their education.
Do you think that being outside the conventional industry has helped you with a bridge between, the bike world and education?
I definitely do. I think in both respects, even though I spent 25 years as an educator, I also kind of considered myself a little bit on the fringe there, because I gravitated back and forth. And I think that kind of, outside looking in, but inside looking out sort of paradigm really gave me a unique perspective in both respects. When we started the Aspen High School mountain bike team, it was NICA had already been going for a little while, but I was able to connect with an old colleague, or I guess an old competitor and friend of mine, Nat Ross, and his wife Amy, who are still heavily involved in Bike Bentonville and the cycling industry, and having that connection, but still not being, heavily focused on one or the other, I think gave me a more broad perspective of how to combine those things, and really focus on the kids rather than what my next step was, either as an educator or in the bike industry.
This is about kids, this program, and I take us back into that first class, that first bike tech class, the bike tech class that you taught. What did the room sound and feel like when the students were genuinely engaged?
I really put a lot of energy into trying to get a bike tech program going at Aspen High School, and we ended up transitioning out of Aspen before that program came to complete fruition. It's now been going about as long as my program at Vista has, but when I got to Vista and got my program going, right as we were getting ready to get our delivery of bikes and equipment, COVID hit. And it was really a tough time for me, but it also really opened a lot of doors to me as an educator as well. I got the opportunity. Project Bike Tech was very much relying on Barnett Bicycle Institute at the time to train teachers, and so I got to go spend a week at Barnett Bicycle Institute in Colorado Springs, and met Jeff Donaldson, who is now Project Bike Tech Executive Director. I consider Jeff to be one of the premier educators in bicycle technology ever, and it's really cool to have him on board here. But what that did for me was we were the first class that got back into Barnett Bicycle Institute after the COVID explosion hit. I think it might have been July of that summer. And so I learned firsthand from him and from Barnett how I might be able to run a program within the public school while COVID was still going on. So my first experience at Vista Charter School here in Montrose, when I brought the program in, well, I was able to set the classroom up during that first summer of COVID. And then in the fall, we actually met with our board, and I introduced them to all the protocols that Barnett Bicycle Institute was using. And I said, I really think that we can handle having 10 students in this building under these circumstances. And so that's how I got started. It was really tough. Our bicycles didn't show up for a while because of the supply chain problems with COVID. We had a full workstation. Park Tool was fantastic. They're a big partner of ours, and So classroom setup, if you can picture, I was hoping to get over to the classroom today and be able to actually, do this meeting from there, but it's really, really impressive setup that we have for our classrooms. 10 shop-ready stations, completely equipped with park tools, all the way through wheel truing stands and pretty much anything a professional quality station would have, and a teacher station, which is equipped with some of the things that you wouldn't normally find, frame alignment gauges, for example, and things like that. So that first year, I had 10 students to myself, nobody else in that whole entire school building. And we were allowed to operate through the whole entire fall. I think we were only out of the building for about a month, and we're back in. During that month, it was really challenging, because this is a hands-on course. Luckily, we have a partnership with Shimano, and we were able to use I don't know if you're familiar with Shimano's S-Tech online education program.
Yeah.
We were able to use that as some form of online education through Zoom. Definitely not ideal, but we were still able to keep contact. And so I was given free rein with a group of 10 students for a whole entire school year. And it gave me a ton of chance to just develop enrichment activities and really learn the curriculum and realize how much I loved it. It's probably the only way I made it through COVID.
Yeah, it was just such a strange time for everyone. I think that's a unique way to go through it too, and to be able to interact with young people in a new way. Did you realize in the first class that you were reaching kids differently?
I did have one student from that particular class that went on and worked in a local shop here, Montrose Surf and Cycle, straight out of high school. Spent a little bit of time doing some internship things and back and forth while he was still in class. And he's no longer in the bike industry, but he made a big impact on that shop, as a student coming in, and really was I guess what you would say a star student. At the same time, I had several students during that first, go around that really had no interest in bicycles. They just wanted to do something mechanical. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand about Project Bike Tech, and it really opened my eyes at that point. We're able to provide just general shop skills, shop awareness, tool use, introduction to things like torque and, rotational momentum and so many, STEM-related ideas.
Yeah.
And I had kids that were, went on to join the Colorado Mesa University welding program. And their instructors were like, wow, this is great. You already have shop skills.
Yeah.
We at Project Bike Tech kind of are trying to leverage that a little bit because the CTE thing is really opening up a lot right now. And it's really, the bike industry is a super important part of what we do. But overall, those life skills and those ability to function, be able to pull your car over and actually change the tire yourself.
It's a really good point, and it got me thinking about, you're teaching mathematics alongside the bike tech, and you mentioned torque, gear ratios, torque spec, wheels, how wheels are put together. What do you think, that a student gets versus just a workbook that they wouldn't normally get from that other mainstream education?
It's really an impressive dialogue that can be had there with students that wouldn't normally open up to a dialogue. Good example, a couple redneck kids that I have with lifted trucks, Why is it that your speedometer's off, dude? And why am I not going to buy that truck? Because even though your odometer says 95,000 miles, it might have a few, 10 or 20,000 more on it just because your wheel size isn't correct. We actually have a lab that we do, Wheel Size Matters, and they get to experiment with the circumference formula and how that affects, speed and things like that. And then we roll that over into when we start doing gearing. We have another STEM-related lesson for gear development where they actually will document all the gears, and it's really nice to go with an old school, triple chainring bike where you have some overlap in gears, because then they can see that. They can do an actual rollout with a team of students measuring and really internalize what that gearing does and what it represents, and how changing a tire or wheel size or different crank rotations, it's the sky's the limit. And those kids that aren't really relating it in terms of the bicycle, it's like, oh yeah, you've got a low rider. Well, guess what? You put through those little tiny wheels on there, that's changed your odometer too. What's it doing?
That's a good point. So you've raced professionally. You've coached young riders. You've guided in the mountains. You've taught math. Supported alternative education. What connects those experiences for you?
I think overall it's the human experience, and seeing people develop confidence. Young people, colleagues. When I was guiding, seeing people, learning things about their bicycles, learning things about the environment. Coaching is like that. We started to see the influence of the rider positioning and the wider handlebars and the stance, and how much that was affecting rider efficiency, and seeing riders actually, wow, that actually works, and I use this even back in mogul skiing, having a video of someone and their ergonomics, and then having them look at it and saying, oh, I really am doing that. I need to, and just, I think it doesn't matter what exact area it is, but in all of those focuses, seeing that aha moment and that wow, that like evolution of confidence is I think what makes my day, and my career, to be honest.
Yeah, I love that. I've personally been through those experiences on both sides. I had that aha moment as a rider and also as a coach. I think that's just amazing. So bringing it back to the classroom, what would you say the real difference is between having a established program like you have, versus having one passionate teacher and their very cool class?
Well, I think what we bring as an established program is a level of respect and really a viability to what we're presenting. I think, for example, having Jeff Donaldson come on board as our executive director, you're probably, I think, pretty much anybody that's ever pulled up a Bike Fix video knows who Calvin Jones is, and Calvin Jones is on our board and helping us develop curriculum now. Project Bike Tech has come a long way in really refining ourselves as a true leader in the bicycle education technology arena. There's some great people out there just doing some wonderful things in their classrooms on their own. Like our level 1 certificate, I think, is a real good epitome. Does it say we're pushing out a master mechanic? No, but it does. It does say we've got a skill set and a measurable, teachable paradigm that allows students to develop in a consistent way, and we have a certificate that represents that. And I think that's a really a really proud thing for us.
When so thinking about the program, when a teacher moves into administration or changes schools, retires, what usually breaks first in the program?
It really depends a lot on what kind of energy that teacher has put into trying to have a legacy at that school, follow them. Have they taken time to have someone else in the building shadow and join their classroom and be a potential replacement? How much energy are they putting into preserving their program versus this? I call it the school shuffle. In public education, it's a tough thing because, in order to maximize your retirement in education, you really need to try to climb the ladder. That wasn't my goal as a teacher. That's why I finished teaching Project Bike Tech classes, because I wanted to go out feeling good about what I was doing. And I'm, honestly, I'm paying the price for it a little bit in my retirement. But what does it do to the classroom? It's tough on the school it helps to have a school who's very invested in addition to a teacher who is passionate to bring it. A school that's invested will take the time to really search for a good candidate to come in. Will take the time to put out some advertising and make it sound desirable, and they'll also take the time to look within their staff. It's much easier, especially if a bike tech position is only going to be maybe 1 or 2 periods a day. You can't really go out and hire somebody for that, that wants to, unless they want to be a part-time employee. Plus, you've got that paradigm of having a licensed teacher in the classroom. Sure, there are some shop, people that would make great bike tech instructors, but they're not certified teachers. There's also some certified teachers that necessarily don't have the bike tech background. Finding that fit is tough. We do offer a training program every summer. We just finished that up mid-July. And immediately following that, I put out my kind of welcome back letter, because we have some schools starting up as early as August 3rd this year. And that's when you find out, oh, by the way, so-and-so transitioned. They wanted to be the athletic director, which is a step up, but now we've got this vacant bike tech teacher. We've got somebody that's interested, but they haven't been trained. We are really, really stepping up our game, trying to reach out and be able to train as many teachers as we can, as soon as we can, so that they can feel confident in their roles, because that's a big part of them wanting to continue in that program, is them feeling comfortable and confident. It's not just because it's a cool bike thing to do. The comfort level's got to be there, because managing a classroom of high school students isn't easy anyway.
No. Thinking about who's easier to prepare, you're thinking about the classroom. Do you have to be a teacher to be able to do this?
That's a really interesting question. I've seen all scenarios work well, and I've seen all scenarios break down a little bit. I think we've got a great guy right now in Prescott, Arizona, that is a bike industry, has a mobile shop, and is teaching. He loves kids and worked real easily into the management of a classroom because of his passion for teaching that. Some shop employees don't find themselves very comfortable walking into a classroom full of high school students, especially if you've got maybe 60% of the class that really is super interested in being in there, and then you've got the other 40% that, oh, this is kind of cool, I just want to do it, and then you've got the kid that the principal said, I really think bike tech is going to save this kid. Will you take him? And so you're gonna be trying to trigger something exciting, in that student to get them involved as well. And so, I don't think there's a magic formula, one versus the other. It's more about the person and trying to get that person excited and confident with what they're doing. And that's a large part of my role as the educational support specialist, trying to give teachers what they need, when they need it, and make them feel confident in their role, that they can go, and also that they can have fun with it. That's a big part of teacher longevity, is if you're just seeing it as a grind every day, it's just not going to work out for long term. But if you're able to find some fun in it and enjoy what you're doing and see those aha moments, I can work with anybody and get them, feeling good about teaching bike tech, as long as they want to, and they are willing to put some time in. So I've got a training program next week in Aztec, New Mexico. Got some, trying to get a little cohort of Southwest teachers there. I've got a teacher from Cortez coming over from a job turnover that happened at our open school there, and working with a teacher in Carbondale, Colorado, to come over as well. And it's kind of nice to have a cohort like that rather than just to pop into one school, because then you get these different experiences and teachers can go, oh, I didn't think about this. I'm confident, teaching a brake adjustment, but I don't really know how to teach a measurable, repeatable process doing that. Versus the teacher that comes in and says, I love bikes. I have no idea how to adjust anything or how these tools work. As long as you've got some passion and some willingness and some interest, that's what it takes. We can help with the rest of that to get that confidence.
So you have the program, it's running. You get the Project Bike Tech graduates. They walk into a local shop. What should the shop owner expect from that student? What should they expect them to know? And what is unfair or unreasonable to expect them to know?
That's a really good question, Brandon. Thanks for that. It's something that we've worked with a lot to try to manage. And so I think the best case scenario is for the school to have a good long-term working relationship with a local shop or shops in the area, and for the shops to understand that yes, you've got a student who's got this little level 1 certificate. What does that really represent in terms of skill? Well, it's not somebody who's going to walk in and be your lead mechanic. It's somebody who can walk in, has some shop experience, knows how to use a bike stand. I'm going to take a little side trip here, and you can reel me in whenever you want to. But one of the exercises I do in class is just having a whole room full of bikes and having the students rotate them in and out of the shop stand. And my whole spiel there is, you guys do not want to be the guy that walks into the shop and looks like an idiot trying to get the bike into the bike stand. It's not an easy thing to do. You need to be able to find the balance point. We're going to practice this. Okay, everybody, I want to see that you know how to adjust the bike stand, what all the parts are, that you're not going to take skin off your hand from, dropping it down. It's things like that I think shops need to understand. We're spending time making sure that students know how to select a tool that fits, spoke wrenches. Amateur wheel builders are notorious for stripping nipples on spokes, because they don't know how to choose a spoke wrench. So you can't expect a level of proficiency from one of our students to walk in and just take over as your full-time mechanic. What you can expect is to have someone, especially if you're willing to take the time and host them for some visits and get to know that student. You can expect someone to walk into your shop that's a trainable trainee, that understands how shop tools work, that understands the basic components of a bicycle. They're going to need some internship time to be able to. They're going to need a good mentor to learn. They haven't adjusted 20 derailleurs on 30 different bikes. They haven't seen the ins and outs. They've been exposed to it, and they know they have a good idea of how things work. They're ready to be mentored by someone who's a veteran mechanic.
Just a really great program. You have a guest speaker series that I found interesting. What was the problem you were originally trying to solve with that guest speaker series?
So I was hired part-time, and I'm still part-time, and basically just to support teachers. And one of my tasks was to host a monthly meeting. And those monthly meetings, understand they have to be virtual because we have schools in all 4 time zones. It's difficult, tremendously difficult to pick a good time. So we have a fairly moderate attendance to those, and then making them productive over time. Yes, it's great to sit and talk about, your favorite lesson, or, what kind of adjustment things you've run into, or how do you get the kid in the corner that doesn't want to be in class from detuning all the wheels while you're not looking, kind of thing. It was actually Jeff, our executive director, said, I've got some good connections in the bike industry. Maybe we should have somebody come in and do like just a mini workshop for an hour during one of those meetings. And we tried it, and it was fantastic. We've had Patrick Zust, product manager from Full Speed Ahead. We've had Anthony Diaz, who developed his own custom suspension shop in Durango. My son, who I mentioned, does a lot of media management and product launches and stuff for Shimano. We've had him come in. We've had just a good variety, and we've got a lot of other folks on board for this coming year, and we record those sessions, so it's kind of neat. At one point we had considered doing it more of a podcast style, but it's kind of neat to have other teachers be able to join a call and just, be able to ask questions or say, well, what happens if you do this, kind of thing. And so we record those, and we have a library available on our curriculum drive where teachers can go back and either A, if they weren't able to attend a meeting, they can get up to speed, or B, they can use portions of that or the full thing in class with students. We have a career development unit that I think is really a lot of fun for me, because I've had exposure to some really cool careers in cycling, and I like to share those. And so I really enjoy that. And this is another tool that the teachers can use. Hey, we've got Anthony Diaz with his spiked mohawk that never graduated high school, who's engineering custom made suspension parts that all the top pros want. It's just kind of another avenue that's really brought, I think, some diversity to our programming.
Is there one that stood out to you in that series that you think was either made an exceptional impact on a student or even to the program in general?
So I would say Anthony Diaz definitely in terms of student impact. We had the second time I've done a couple sessions with Anthony. He's a good friend of mine, and when I put it out there that we were going to do another session, I had actually 2 or 3 teachers chime in and say, hey, can we bring students to that session? I've got a student that wants to ask Anthony about how he finished high school, why he didn't go to college, why he all of a sudden chose to get into bicycle technology, and it was really cool to see that interaction, and those aha moments from students again, saying, wow, this is a guy I could connect with, and maybe I do need to finish high school, and that way I once I've got that, that ticket punch, that little piece under my belt, I can branch off any direction I want to go, but I've got these little subset of skills. I think even for students that don't want to be in the bike industry, going through a bike tech class gives them, just a good rounded, another I guess, certificate or piece of ticket to being a solid adult.
Mm-hmm. There's so many things where if you finish something, right, if you get that thing done, that's a, you get to take that with you wherever you go. It's a big part of, I think, being an adult. It's such a good point.
For sure.
So, a big chunk of our audience are bike shop
Sure.
team members, bike shop owners. Just thinking about these independent shops stretched so thin. We have to move meetings around because they're running the business. It's a day-to-day. What's the useful role that a shop could play without over-promising? So how can they get involved?
I think even just a connection with a mechanic in the shop, if they're willing to have a mechanic come over and do a guest mechanic day in classroom, I think that can be really super impactful. I think also them being willing to host a student or a field trip to see how a shop looks, how things operate. We've got students who are in and out of bike shops on a fairly regular basis. We've got NICA racers who probably have nicer bikes than the instructors. And then we've got kids who have never been in a bike shop and really don't know. And I think developing that relationship with, being willing, you're right, shops are stretched thin, schools are too, being willing to either come into the school and be a part of that program, or being willing to host student or students in the shop, even if it's only for a quick visit. Those things can be super impactful, and that's the kind of thing that can develop a relationship for a student that might say, oh, that's a really cool place. I might want to work there someday, and I might work harder in class because I want to make a difference, and I want to show up, and I want to do well, at that shop, and I'll have a connection. I'll know somebody at that shop. I'm not scared to walk in. I can see, hey, Joe, you were the guy. Yeah, that was really cool when you came in. Hey, I might be interested in working here.
Fantastic. You've been doing this for a while. Is there something you tried either yourself in the classroom or project bike tech that either didn't work out or worked out entirely different than you expected?
Event management can be kind of a tricky, slippery slope for us. It's something that we'd like to be involved with, but walking into an event, setting up a tent and a bunch of tools and a stand, and then having a student who A, might be real timid to interacting with the public, and B, really doesn't have the skill set to be, able to take charge of that bike. I've had that a couple times where I felt like I didn't want to put students into a situation that was that far over their heads. What we've kind of relegated ourselves to, if we're going to be involved in an event now, is we offer what we call a free bike check. We're not going to do like an overhaul. We're not going to do a major assessment, but our kids can check the air, make sure it seems like this bike is rideable. They can run it through the gears. They can lube the chain properly. They can spin the wheels, tell them if there's a problem, and then say, I would recommend you take this to such and such a shop to get it fixed. That's a more comfortable role. Where I have seen that become more successful, a lot of our schools refurbish bikes as a volunteer for different programs within their cities. They may bring them to another group of impoverished kids. They may donate to homeless. We've got several bike programs, and in that respect, it's not so much putting the kids on the spot as the event thing has definitely been, I have to be careful about how I go into those. I don't want someone who's panicked about getting to the start line and their derailleur's not working to have a student who's really not prepared to handle that make their bike malfunction worse before they start an event. That's really a tough situation for us.
So without sharing any details that a student wouldn't want shared, can you think of a situation, maybe one young person whose relationship with the school or with the program really changed in this experience?
Sure. Working at the alternative school here in Montrose, we've got several of those. One that sticks out a lot is a student I mentioned earlier that transitioned to working in a shop. When I'll call him Sean. When Sean first came into my classroom, he really didn't have any interest in bicycles. He was just trying to find something different to do that might get him through, and that was the case for a lot of our students. And I really saw over time Sean transition to, wow, this is kind of cool. I'm learning how things work, Sean eventually, I think maybe 3 or 4 years at Montrose Surf and Cycle. Sean also really got hooked on the Shimano S-Tech program to the point where it was almost to his detriment to, he spent more time doing Shimano S-Tech in class than he did focusing, in some other teachers' classes, than he did focusing on getting their credit. So I won't go down that rabbit hole too far, but But, over time, it really did help Sean realize that he wanted to finish high school, he wanted to graduate, and he developed that slow, over time relationship with the shop where he felt comfortable walking in and saying, hey, I'd really like to apply for a job here. Here's my skill. Sean took his notebook to work for probably the first year that he worked at Montrose Surf and Cycle, and would look things up that he didn't remember, and it became kind of a shop, I guess, sort of one of those private, I don't want to say joke because it wasn't really a joke, but like, okay, Sean, maybe you should go look this up. But, he developed the confidence that just over time, it made me super proud to see that happen.
What does success look like for the student who completes the bike tech program, but they don't ever work in a shop?
I think that varies a lot. We've got students who have just started their own handyman business, because they've developed a confidence with tools, measurement skills. We spend a lot of time with just basic skills like that. I've got students who use this program as a platform to get into motorcycle mechanics because I actually had a motorcycle mechanic come in and talk to our class at one point, and it's like, hey, there's some similarities, there's a lot of differences, but if you walked into my shop and said you had these skills, and we did have a couple students go that direction, and they're functioning in shops here around town. I've had students just call me and say, "Man, I do keep in touch with a lot of former students. I have a lot of former students talk to me later on, and even the students that come and say, I never really did anything mechanical in my career, but I was able to fix my sink. I was able to put new washers in my sink when it started leaking. I knew how to figure out whether a repair video on YouTube was actually going to lead me the right way and it was legitimate, or, is this the Calvin Jones of sinks kind of thing. So all those different varieties, I think.
I'm sort of reflecting on, my troubleshooting, and I wonder if, maybe some of that experience learning how to, wrench actually has impacted that kind of confidence. You can do it, and I think that's a big part of it. Think about 5 years from now. What would make you say that Project Bike Tech is successful, has truly succeeded? Is it like more classrooms, stronger teacher retention, deeper shop partnerships, more graduates, either in the industry or just in general, or something maybe that's less measurable, less tangible? What would success look like in 5 years?
I think we'd really like to have a larger footprint. I think there's a lot of schools who aren't aware of what we're doing that would really benefit from having a Project Bike Tech classroom. So I think all of the above, though, Brandon, everything you just mentioned would be a huge success for me. I see successes on a daily basis, those small successes. I think overall, us being able to expand our footprint and develop those relationships with shops and have shops promoting us as well as us promoting shops, that win-win situation that everybody in the bike industry looks for. There's a lot of egos in the bike industry, and it's really beneficial for us to be humble about what we're doing and develop relationships. And overall, we really want to see schools successful, and we really think vocational education, the expansion of vocational education is exciting. And I think overall, probably the expansion of Project Bike Tech, would be a huge, huge success for me. And we're focused on that, and it's working.
So after all this, racing, coaching, teaching, supporting a national program like Project Bike Tech, what makes the bike still feel like freedom for you rather than work?
That's a good question too. I went through a little bit of a phase there when I sort of retired from racing, where I didn't really want to be at events for a while, and sort of I went through this phase of all I want to do is ride my single speed by myself on this trail with nobody around. I even went through a phase, and I hesitate as a bike tech person to say this, but I went through this minimalist phase where I wasn't carrying tools. It was all just me and the bike. We're going to go out. And then I broke down 15 miles out, and that was the end of that one. For me, I still love just the getting out and getting, the bicycle as a tool for freedom, and getting out into the hills is the biggest thrill for me, and then sharing that with other people who get excited about it is every bit as enjoyable.
Well, I share your joy for the bike. I think a lot of folks that listen do. Paul, thank you so much for sharing Project Bike Tech and giving us a peek into what you do and into yourself. It's a wonderful story. Project Bike Tech is projectbiketech.org. So we'll put some links in the show notes, and I just want to thank you for joining, and thank everyone for listening. to Spokes and Strategy, where the business of bikes meets the joy of riding. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for having me.